Recently there was the news that Gene Hackman died, um, and there was some mystery kind of surrounding that. Um, Recently there's kind of, I don't know, culturally been this desire for things to be bigger than they seem, and I'll admit that I was prey to it too when I initially heard the news. It just all the headlines and stuff make it sound like, I don't know, some like terrible murder suicide type thing happened, and it sways your opinion. And now today we kind of learn the reality of that situation. That Gene Hackman died a week after his wife, his primary caregiver, Betsy Arakawa, uh, passed away from like a rare disease transmitted by mice, which is really terrible. And, you know, now that we have the answer, I thought maybe people's, I don't know why I optimistically thought that people's thirst would be quenched, but it kind of opened up something I've been thinking about lately. And it's just that people are so uneducated about Alzheimer's and its effects. And I'm not really going to go into too much um, the details of specifically Hackman and Betsy's death, but I think it kind of maybe exposed something to me that I had worried about for a long time. And it was seeing the general reaction to the news being that, from what we know, from what the authorities have said, is that Betsy died from the disease, and then Jean died about a week after. And no one knew about this. I don't think they even found both of them until a week after Jean died. And it also came out, I don't know if this was public information before, but I didn't know this, that Jean was suffering from Alzheimer's. And when I looked at the response online, and maybe this is just me in my own bubble, I was really disappointed to see that people were still asking questions and not in a way that was good. People saying stuff like, "Oh, why didn't you call the police?" or "Why didn't you do this?" or "Wouldn't you have realized?" Like, I know he had Alzheimer's, but like, wouldn't you have known that something was wrong? And it's just really itched me the wrong way because, from my personal experience, my father suffered from early onset Alzheimer's. Um, and when I go into this, I don't know facts really about Alzheimer's, I would say. I'm just speaking from my personal experience and what I've seen. Um, Especially around early onset, I feel like people don't understand just how much, like, the person is not there. Um, it's frightening, and it's not something that I think people can fully understand unless they know someone who's gone through it, which sucks. And it's just unfortunate because seeing all these reactions of people questioning and people so like true crime brained, they want this to be some grander story when the reality is that stuff like this happens all the time. Um, like the fact that I'm just gonna leave this unedited pretty much. The fact that I don't know. It just pisses me off because I was so, in my experience, seeing people react like that and not knowing what Alzheimer's truly is, kind of equating it to just, oh, you forget memories and stuff like that. When it's so much more, your brain is like literally like disappearing. Those parts of you are gone. It's not like it's a slow death. When someone dies, they disappear. They are gone. That is what I've realized with my dad. You it's the sad reality. But like watching Alzheimer's happen, especially early onset, they're just the pieces of them are literally disappearing. They do not exist anymore in the way that you remembered them. And you're watching that happen as they're still alive. The shell is kind of walking around of them. And I know I'm rambling a bit and I apologize. But to get to the grander point, I just see all this misunderstanding, and I just think about all the times that, especially with early onset Alzheimer's, my dad did not look like, when he was in the middle stages, like he was someone who would be suffering from Alzheimer's. And people don't, I don't know, assume that that would be the case, which created a lot of like uncomfortable situations for us. Because I think when people see older people, they expect like the memory loss and acting differently and acting weirdly. And when you're younger, like my dad was in his 50s, you don't appear that way. People won't expect that. And it created like a lot of awkward situations where maybe he would. There was a situation that I remember so clearly. It was when we were going to a Red Sox game. It was like, I think the last Red Sox game we brought him to. Or no, it wasn't, but that's besides the point. We brought him to a Red Sox game, and we were in the elevator or something. And fortunately, Alzheimer's can affect people in a ton of different ways. Fortunately for me, my dad was never mean, like I know a lot of people, but your brain is literally changing. Like, this is not indicative of the person that they are or were. But fortunately, my dad was very kind and very nice despite the disease. And we were in the elevator, and my dad's always loved the nieces and nephews and, you know, us as little kids. He's always great around kids. And we were in the elevator, and another family walked in, and he I think he assumed it was his nephew, who was about the age of the kid that was in there. And the kid was standing next to him, and he just like patted him on the head, basically. And a completely justified reaction. The parents were kind of like, what the hell is going on? Because you would not expect this. My dad looked completely normal in the middle stages. Late stages was not the same, but that's besides the point. And I remember my mom saying, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He's suffering from Alzheimer's, whatever. And the look those people gave, I try not to blame them because I know, but it just really struck me then how uneducated people were about the disease, because the look they gave was so unbelieving and so misunderstanding. And I know my dad had no ill intent, and it was just heartbreaking. And that moment stuck with me almost more than that. I remember the times, you know, people just, I've had to, you know, we were in public or something, and he kind of wanders around or something like that, or doesn't make sense talking or something like that. Nothing bad, but like people looked at him like he was, I don't know, drunk or something was wrong with him. And I just getting back to the grander point, seeing all these reactions to Gene Hackman's death, someone who's, mind you, 95 with Alzheimer's, people are still speculating that why didn't he call the police or why didn't he help his wife? And people have no concept of how terrible this disease is, how impossible it is to operate on your own. And fortunately for us, we were able to get my dad in a nursing home, but that is not the reality for a lot of people. And we still had to care for him for a long time before the late stages of Alzheimer's, during COVID, so we were stuck in place. And being a primary caregiver, fortunately, we were not in a situation where it was one person solely taking care of. We were often taking turns and stuff like that. But it is unbelievably exhausting to care for a person with Alzheimer's. It is the effects that it has on the whole family is terrible. And I don't mean to sound selfish, because there's the person it's affecting too, but it is a disease that affects so many aspects of your life. We should not be in a place where people don't understand the disease until it affects them, because the reality is that dementia and Alzheimer's is a disease that affects like a shit ton of people, and you shouldn't understand it until it's too late. And I just really hope that maybe, because we can't, it's so sad to me to hear. And I remember when my dad was dying, or we knew he was going to die, or you know what, like a month before, when I knew it was going to be coming around, not the definitive death, I was terrified of how it was going to happen. I was worried he was going to fall, bleed out, and I knew he was at the nursing home, and I knew he was being monitored. But it's just, I absolutely do not want to speculate on what, Gene Hackman's family life was and who, checked in, but I think it should stand as a lesson to the public that this disease is really terrible. And in the late stages, it is the person who is there is not there anymore, regardless of who they were. That going a week suffering in the late stages of Alzheimer's by yourself, it's so terrible, I can't even imagine. And I just think of my dad and imagining that suffering. And I really just adamantly we should try to have a better understanding of Alzheimer's. I know a lot of people are affected by it. But really, like, learning along the way is really tough. And I really don't want society to only learn when they experience it themselves or experience someone suffering through it. And just seeing all the reactions online to Gene Hackman's death and the speculation, and just showing this grander misunderstanding of the disease and its effects, even when it comes to someone who was 95 and people still speculating, what does that mean for someone who like my dad, who suffered from it at 50? Like, it's, I wish I could concise these thoughts, like put these thoughts in a more concise manner, but I just had to ramble, because when I saw that this morning, it just really made me sad. Less so, more just seeing the reactions from people online. And again, maybe I'm in my own bubble. Maybe I'm conflating a minority of like a loud minority of people who think this way. But from my personal experience, especially from someone who suffered from early onset Alzheimer's, people do not understand this disease until it affects them. And that affects the people who are suffering from it and the people who live with the people who are suffering from it. And we need to I really hope there's some way that we can have a better understanding. And this case is horrible. And I don't think we should speculate about some grander conspiracy when the main takeaway from this is that you should just check on your people who are suffering from this. You should check on the caregivers, because the reality is that a lot of people suffer from this alone. And I can't even imagine how bad that is. And we, as just people in general, when you see these people out in public, need to have a better understanding and more empathy towards them, because they are literally disappearing inside their head. It's so devastating. Every family situation is complicated, but this disease is just so terrible, and I hope that the public reception to this turns into like a outcry or a way to have a better understanding of the disease, and a reminder that we should check in on people, and a reminder that if you're uneducated on the disease, don't speculate and don't say things that are untrue. That's pretty much it. I don't even know if I don't know. I just needed to ramble and get it out. I don't know if this will be good. Who knows? But yeah. I just hope that one day this disease is eradicated, and it's a fucking shame that funding is being stripped away, because the reality is any time that is not spent researching this disease is more people suffering from it, more people dying from it, and less time people can have with their loved ones. I hope that at the end of the day, the reception for this turns less into conspiracy and more towards empathy towards people with Alzheimer's and dementia suffering from it. And maybe a wake-up call that you should learn more about this disease, this terrible disease. And I hope that Gene Hackman and Betsy rest in peace, because just an awful way to go. And I just hope that maybe, if anything, it serves as a reminder that we should check in on our loved ones. And even if your relationship is strained or something, I have no idea what their relationship was like with their family. But regardless, just a terrible, terrible situation. And hopefully, stuff like this never happens again. But the reality is that this is the reality of the disease and its effects on other people. And it's just a shame. There's nothing more to say than that.